Welcome to The Big Story, where we break down the world's most critical developments with insight, clarity, and context. I am Samson Balogun, and today we are joined by Sam Nwoko, Deputy Editor of the Nigerian Tribune. The global landscape has been profoundly shaken by recent joint military strikes by the United States and Israel on targets inside Iran. What began as a strategic military operation has rapidly escalated into a geopolitical flashpoint, with far-reaching implications, not just for the Middle East, but for global security and world economy at large. From rising oil prices to diplomatic tensions, supply chain uncertainty, and economic shockwaves felt from Asia to Africa and beyond. This is a story that affects everyone. So today we unpack what this conflict means not only for regional stability, but also for global markets, diplomatic alliances, and international peace. Issues at the heart of today's big story. Now, the military offensive by the United States and Israel against Iran, widely described as one of the most serious escalations in recent years, has transformed long-standing tensions into open conflict. These strikes, which included attacks on strategic facilities and were followed by swift Iranian retaliation, have thrust the world into a new phase of geopolitical uncertainty. At the center of this crisis is the Strait of Hormuz, a passage through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply is transported each day. Disruptions here have already led to sharp increases in oil prices, contributing to inflationary pressures and fears of broader economic instability. Economists warn that sustained supply concerns could add significant pressure to global inflation and slow economic growth. But beyond energy markets, this conflict has touched global diplomacy and security arrangements. World powers have reacted with mixture of condemnation, calls for restraint, and strategic recalibration, underscoring how deeply interconnected today's global system truly is. With us today is Sam Nwoko, brings journalistic insight into how these world events are resonating not just across capitals and boardrooms, but also on nations like Nigeria, where economic justice, energy markets, and international policy intersect in profound ways. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning. But before we go deep into this particular topic this morning, let's listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. 20 years ago, he made a promise, and today it is happening. We'll be back after this break.
But I also have a message today for the people of Iran. You are not our enemy. You are our friends. Shoma duste ma hestid. One day, my Iranian friends, you will be free from the evil regime that terrorizes you, hangs gays, jails journalists, tortures political prisoners, and shoots innocent women like Nida Sultan, leaving her choking on her own blood on the streets of Tehran. I have not forgotten Nida. I'm sure you haven't too. And so, the people of Iran, when your day of liberation finally comes, the friendship between our two ancient peoples will surely flourish once again.
All right, welcome back. That was Benjamin Netanyahu. In 2007, he made a promise. Sam Nwoko, good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewer.
Just because before we talk about the economic impact of this conflict, let's talk about the conflict itself. The liberation Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about 20 years ago. Are we seeing it now?
You know, I think one of the best ways to answer this question is to say, let me transliterate my thoughts in Yoruba. It has so many things inside. It packs a lot of layers. It has come in a lot of plies. You know, we'll be removing it one after the other. Yes, it looks like it, because it was the same Netanyahu who spoke that time that is the prime minister today. And beyond that, it has always been a smoldering issue. Since the deposition of the Shah, there has never been a time Iran was not in conflict. However, Iran as a country is building its own capabilities. Then others are also watching and saying, no, you cannot rise beyond a certain level. So over the years, I knew it was going to come. And I think perhaps this is the decisive time. And what a time for it to happen. There are so many other countries who are looking in several other directions. Of course, you and I know that Russia and Ukraine are in their own dugouts. Then Pakistan, which is on the upper fringes of India, and Afghanistan started their own just days after we came and from the Strait of Hormuz and a whole lot of things. So from taking attention away from the real thing to the real thing and so on. So perhaps we could say it's the start for, because what they were aiming at is a regime change. And now it's going to take a lot of things. We are going to unpack a lot of things to be able to arrive at that regime change, that so-called liberation Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about 20 years ago.
Now, we also see a video, because some they have considered this to be mixed feelings in Iran as we speak. To some people, especially those Iranians who are not living in Iran as we speak, they're happy that this is happening. But some who are in Iran, they gathered together to mourn the passing of their leader. So how conflicting can this be for the people of Iran? But before you go about it, let's just watch that video where there were jubilations in Australia, in Germany. Iranians outside the country are actually celebrating that this is happening in their country. We'll be back shortly.
Ataque.
All right, that was videos. We saw videos of Iranians, especially those who don't live in the country. They are so happy that this is happening. So what does this mean for Iran as
what is happening? Now, for me, there are two planks to this. The first is the plank of those who live in Iran. For those who live in Iran, they are, let me use the word subdued. They have to obey the regime. I don't want to say they have to kowtow to the regime. They have to obey the regime. They have to do whatever it is it takes. There have been protests. I remember some protesters who, flung off their head covers and so on and said, look, this is not who we are, and things like that. So for those who are in Iran, you have to be muffled. You have to be restrained in your celebrations. At the same time, you have those who support the regime and those who want to express themselves in mourning what has happened and so on. So you will always have that, especially within the country. But outside the country, we have to remember that Iranians have always said that they are not Arabs, that they are Persians. They don't speak Arabic. They speak Persia. And going back in history, they were not like that. And by not being like that, they feel that undue subjugation of who they are, undue arm twisting of the typical Iranian to behave like some other kind of people will not last forever. And before now, we know there were direct flights from Tel Aviv to Tehran and a few other places in Iran and so on and so forth. So there was cooperation. And that time, the Middle East, yes, conflicts, there were conflicts in certain areas, but it was not as the tension was not as high as we have it today. So we always have to remember that Iranian people are something they are not. They are not what they are projected to be. Iranians are not Arabs. And I know a few people who had, in the course of their jubilation in the United States, said, look, in fact, some would fling their head coverings and say, yes, now we are back to who we were, and that this should be persistent. That regime change to them is very important because it's like resetting their country, taking it back to what it was, a free democracy which was led by the Shah, and the Shah being the kind of leader they want, who listen to them and so on and so forth. So it makes it a bit different. The Islamic Revolution brought things they didn't want to agree with, and they still felt we do not agree with it, regardless of the oppression, if that's what it is, regardless of the strict rules and the very, very, very stringent measures that we are imposed on the people. So that is why you have jubilations in many parts of the world, and even in certain parts of Iran. And again, you also have people who support the administration. Okay,
let's now talk about what has been going on so far. Now, countries following the joint U.S. and Israel attack on Iran, Iran responded by launching a series of missile and drone strikes across the Middle East, targeting U.S., Israeli, and allied military sites. According to multiple news reports, the main countries that were hit or targeted in Iran's retaliation include United Arab Emirates. Missiles and drones hit part of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, including airports and other infrastructure, killing and injuring civilians. Also, in Bahrain, Iranian missiles struck the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet base and caused blast in Manama. Also in Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and this has continued over and over. Now, these are U.S. and Israel's installations in some countries where they also have interest. So they are not attacking Israel as a country. They are not attacking America as a country, but they are attacking their interests in other countries. That means that some countries who have common interests and common goals with the United States and Israel at this time, they are not safe. Are we going to see more of these attacks? But then, just last night, there was a report that the newly installed acting leader of Iran has reached out to Donald Trump for a discussion. Could that be an end to this old brouhaha?
Well, first, let me take it from there. It's a pointer to a temperance in the conflict. At least it will reduce what is happening to other allied countries which are not directly involved in the conflict itself. You know, so the new leader can do that, and he's taking that step, and that step is going to help in reducing the tension. That's one of the first steps. Then secondly, what Iran did in attacking U.S. and Israeli interests across the Middle East has also increased, it has increased the, I don't want to call it hatred, it has increased the resentment of people for the regime, and their, the disposition of the affected victims, the disposition of the various people affected is, I told you. I told you these people are not what they tend to be. And again, it is also of interest to know that Iran has, over the years, been accused of sponsoring terrorism across the world, funding Hamas, funding ISIS, funding Hezbollah, funding so many other.
So even Iran does not fight its own wars. So they fight proxy wars.
Yes, they fight proxy wars so as to remain a superpower in that region. And now, in order to bring them to whittle them to size, to bring them under control, so to say, and that's what is happening now. Some people have claimed that if Iran had not become what it became, if there hadn't been the Islamic Revolution, Lebanon wouldn't have been in war for many years. Lebanon wouldn't have been in crisis. There wouldn't have been crisis in Syria, which involved Assad and the killings. There wouldn't have been the rise of ISIS, so much that the Gethsemane and all those other places were nearly obliterated. Christians were killed and so on and so forth. So what people are saying is that with the growing influence of Iran in that region, the growing influence of Iran in that region has to be curtailed so that peace can be maintained across board. And that is what it looks like on the outside. But on the inside, there are other interests which many people may not be able to point to at the immediate. Those interests include the kind of things we already know: economic interest, the oil, the control of economic power across the regions.
Military bases.
Yeah, military bases. Because if you, of course, you know, places like Bahrain, Qatar has interest. Both Qatar deals with Iran very well. Yes. So in all those places, you know, Bahrain, UAE wants to, especially its economic economic hub, which is Dubai. They want to remain and do their business. They don't want to have anything to do with all these conflicts and so on, so that they can run their life the way they want to run it. But Iran will say, no, you have to, you know, behave in certain ways to be able to be accepted. So if these people are looking at a general area, a general Middle East, which is under the control of Iran, it's going to be, the tension is going to keep escalating. And that is why Palestine has remained what it is till today. You know, part of the reasons why the two-state solution has remained a very, very difficult one, and so on and so forth. So, generally speaking, as it is now, the interests that are shown, especially by the new leader, the young Khamenei, will, to a large extent, bring down the tension and perhaps put a kind of comma to what is going on in the Middle East at the moment. But hey, the affected countries outside Iran, Israel, and the United States would also be on the lookout, because they will not like what has happened to them.
Now, let's talk about, you spoke about the Islamic Revolution and subsequent regimes that has come after that. And some have spoken about suppression of the media. And in history, if we talk about history, according to research on press suppression under the Islamic Republic over the past 4 decades, at least around 30 journalists and writers were killed or died under suspicious circumstances associated with state actions such as executions or covert assassinations. Names documented include authors, editors, translators, and writers whose work challenges the regime. Now, if you are going to talk about names, we are still going to remember Zara Kazemi, Ibrahim Zazadeh,
Salman Rushdie.
These are big names in the industry who have been, some even disappeared under suspicious circumstances.
When this happened, when I wasn't let me say, I wasn't as old as this when the issue of Salman Rushdie came, and when people who knew, some elderly people discussed suppression, I didn't understand it. I was just fresh out of secondary school, or just about that. I was still in secondary school. I was still wearing uniform. So I began to ask myself, what is the meaning of, who is Salman Rushdie? So I had to go
research.
Yeah, there was no internet then. So we had to go look for books and began to read newspapers. Anywhere you see, there's a place at Coca-Cola in Songo.
Yeah.
You know, it's a variety store where they sell Reader's Digest, Time International, The Week, and other foreign magazines. So we'll go there. The man was magnanimous enough to allow us sit at a corner and read those books and make sure that you read those magazines and read them without disrupting the, don't make any marks on them, so that he could also still sell them. And later, when I was able to afford past copies, I loved reading them a lot that time. So I began to see why people said, no, this shouldn't be the case. And Salman Rushdie's case was like a metaphor, because it was one of the matters people like Margaret Thatcher took up seriously and said, what is this? And that was a pointer to what we are saying today, that the regime change of that time, the Islamic Revolution, changed the psyche of the people. Oh, no. It couldn't change the psyche of the people. I think they are stronger psychologically than people like us.
Because they have also revolted time and time again.
They kept revolting. They kept saying, no, this is not. Even as we speak now, before the escalation of these conflicts, there have been reports of killings of protesters. And the numbers are put at around 40,000. which to me is a very large number. Sometimes I think it tended to sound as an outrageous figure. So these people have consistently over the years revolted against the regime. Say, look, there have been protests. Some will come to international sports meets and say, I'm not going back. They will defect and say, look, I am not what you are projecting me to be. You know, even some of them are even saying they should revert to the old name of their country and things like that.
Even the flag.
Yes, and the flag. You know, so what this means is that suppression has to be a form of a tool, a very strong tool to be able to maintain, to oil the regime and keep it alive. And apart from that, they have to build a military power so that when anybody rises,
external interference.
Yes, any external force rises against what the regime is doing, they are going to be able to stand against that external force or external power and say, look, mind your business, let us do our own business. But the world is no longer like that, and this is for a very long time. From the time that should be 1986 or 87, when Libya, Tripoli and Benghazi was attacked, you know, from afar, a remote issue, something that, you know, during Gaddafi and so on, it began to change the worldview about some of these things. And today, what is happening today has been long in coming. Many people know that it won't be forever because no particular power will reign forever. Even the Shah had to be overthrown. The Shah lives in exile today and so on and so forth. So maybe we have come to the end of the regime in Iran.
Okay, very quickly, now let's talk about the business angle and what this means for countries like Nigeria. Now, at the center of this crisis, as I said the other time, is the Strait of Hormuz, a passage through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply is transported each day. And as we speak, disruptions here have already led to sharp increases in oil prices, contributing to inflationary pressures and fears of broader economic instability. Now, how much of a problem will the continuous disruption of operations on the Strait of Hormuz cause countries across the world, especially African countries?
African countries, thank you. You see, when the Russian conflict started, you know, there were fears of what might be, especially in the Red Sea area, and did I say Red Sea? The Black Sea.
Black Sea.
You know, there was a whole lot of fear and apprehension about what would happen in that regard. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, not many people even thought about it. Not many people thought about it. When the Palestinian conflict, Pakistani conflict with Afghanistan broke out, I was surprised. Though you go look, say, wait be your own. But I was surprised. I said, why is Pakistan and Afghanistan
starting a war?
I mean, why? What is the transborder conflict? What is going on?
About?
But I now reasoned and read a few literature and said, okay, Modi, Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, is of interest in this whole thing. Pakistan is at red alert, always at red alert in India, especially the Kashmir region and so on. And that Strait of Hormuz is one of the areas where the interest is, everybody, their eye open like this, they are like, what nonsense are you? If anybody to buy anything, you know, if you raise any kind of now, in order for the Israeli-American joint operation to, they have to do something about the Strait of Hormuz. I'm coming to the economic impact of all of this. So it means that they had planned something to distract Pakistan from the north, because when they wanted to attack Iran first, Pakistan rose in stout defense of Iran. Pakistan rose and said, like, this cannot happen, and places like Turkey and so on. Now, they had to create a conflict for Pakistan to go to its own north and be responding to Afghanistan. And upon the little loss of concentration on the south, where you have the
Then Iran
Hormuz,
is attacked.
something now happened. So the economic importance of this, especially for Africa, is now that 20%, the average of 20% of passage that is in that place will now drop probably to like 10%. Look at what has happened to airlines. Look at what has happened to flights, businesses, and so on. In fact, it was pointing towards something like, because the entire Middle East was crippled, nearly all airlines who would have something to do with the countries where this conflict affected at the immediate had to cancel their flights. There was chaos all over many continents. Now, what it means is that if there is a reduction in the passage of the Strait of Hormuz, it means that what you are exporting or importing will be under stricter control. But Nigerian oil does not pass through the Strait of Hormuz, especially. Our own is more like a transatlantic trade to the west and to the south, and in some cases from south it's we do business. When we were doing business with India and some other countries in other Asian countries, it was not like that, and China had to create its own avenue because it has a very strong links with Southern Africa and so on. So for Nigeria, I don't see it as one big issue. It's going to change our books. Crisis. It's not going to be a major crisis for us. Yes, I don't see it going to be a major crisis for us, but overall, it's going to impact our oil sales. When the Gulf War started, we called something Gulf War windfall. When Iraq and Kuwait were in conflict, a lot of things happened that time when they said, okay, there was huge oil windfall for Nigeria and that some people had sat on it and so on and so forth. But that is by the way. If there is a windfall now, there is going to be a bigger monitoring of our oil sales, and there's going to be a bigger monitoring of how our oils move. So generally, it's going to affect us, but particularly Nigeria does not have.
Okay, so how would sustained high oil prices mean for developing countries like Nigeria?
Well, sustained oil prices means there will be a tighter dollar control. And if there is a tighter dollar control, it still means the same thing. What you gain from sales, from revenue, you are going to spend because of inflation, because households in America, households in even UK and so on are going to be affected. There's going to be tighter taxing. By tighter, I mean increased. There's going to be more revenue, there's going to be higher inflation. And so what you gain from the left, you use from the right. So that's what it's going to mean. Yes, you may have more oil revenue, it will sound big in the ear, and sound big too. But on the other hand, you have to spend it some way because it has to go through some other avenues also.
So compared to what we saw in Russia-Ukraine war, could this crisis disrupt global supply chains in a way?
Yes, definitely. Because oil is predominantly, Middle East is the hub of world oil supply and demand and supply. So if the Middle East is the hub of the world's oil demand and supply, it means that if the world's oil demand and supply is disrupted, it's going to affect everybody. That's why I said generally it's going to affect. Even OPEC will have to increase quota for some countries and cut quota for some others, because there is no way countries will stop using oil. There is no way countries will not run because there is a conflict in some other countries. So definitely it's going to affect how oil demand and supply flow. So OPEC will have to rise to certain demands and supply. By demand and supply, I mean OPEC will have to say something. OPEC will have to act in certain ways to be able to fit into the new framework this crisis has brought.
Okay, and now that there is a geopolitical tension across the world, how should African countries position themselves?
Unfortunately, we have always been like
sitting on the fence.
Nigeria hasn't got a foreign policy. We don't. The nearest thing we have to a foreign policy is what Senator, the Rep Ted Riley had been doing, forcing us to do something about our foreign policy. We don't have a foreign policy. You cannot say this is Nigeria's
foreign policy.
You cannot say. you know. So
today business with China, tomorrow with India,
you know,
the next with the United States,
and
Israel.
especially by not having a foreign policy, I'm even looking particularly at this regime itself, this Tinubu regime. You cannot say this is the Tinubu regime's foreign policy. Till now, we don't have ambassadors in over 100 countries. In most countries of the world. The ones that were appointed, they have not even been assigned. The ones that were assigned have not been given letters of credence, and so on and so forth. So whatever it is that is happening, the nearest thing we have to foreign policy or foreign engagement is the so-called $9 million lobby contract we signed with certain United States companies. So because of that, Nigeria as a country and Africa as a nation will always be like the sitting duck which we have always been. We are going to sit there and watch things unfold. As we watch things unfold, we will flow with the tide. So because we don't have a foreign policy and we don't have a tight control of our own destinies, we are going to flow with the tide. So I don't see anything different happening from what had happened in the past.
Is there a diplomatic pathway to de-escalate the current crisis?
Yes, from what the young Khamenei has done, it's like raising an olive branch and saying, okay, let's talk. So I'm sure they are going to offer him a regime change option. If he doesn't take it, the crisis is going to come. Oh, I'm not sure. I think, let me not say I'm sure because I'm not part of the people taking this decision. I think they are going to offer him a regime change or go for an election.
So it means that there's a back channel negotiations already taking place.
Sure, because every conflict always ends at the round table. Even Russia and Ukraine are discussing, courtesy of the United States. When Pope Leo the 14th, that's Pope Leo was elected, the United States was I mean, by United States, I mean Trump. Trump was in Rome during the installation of the Pope. And he had a meeting with Russia and Ukraine, a tripartite meeting. It was a very popular photograph then when Trump sat in one empty room. And so what I'm saying is that there will always be a back channel through which negotiations will take place. And when these negotiations take place, then from there, we will see results. So as it is now, it's hot now. It's still very, very tensed. You know, the tension is still so very high, but it will end up at the round table. And I'm sure countries that have been impacted, you know, because civilian targets and military targets of allied countries of US and Israel have been, those ones that have been attacked, those ones are not going to lie low. They are also going to be part of the negotiations. So we have to look at all these things put together. You are going to look at them like a gamut. It's going to come like a team, a cluster of events. And I see it de-escalating in a matter of weeks. I mean, in this week, next week, it's going to be different because the attacks have stopped for now from what we have.
Ceasefire.
Kind of. So, but what the regime offers will now determine whether it will continue or it will remain like that.
So, just before we go, are we seeing propaganda and narrative battles alongside military actions?
Oh, that has been on since the crisis started. In fact, long before the crisis started. You will see that propaganda is one of the tools they use, and propaganda has been made easier with and by artificial intelligence. You see AI, people create a lot of videos and send, and you know, that is also part. In fact, that is even one of the major areas of conflict for non-aligned individuals. When you read some of the things that are put out, and when you see some of the videos and some of the materials that are consumed on the internet, a lot of tension. I know people who have been running helter-skelter, trying to see what can happen to, because a lot of people are there in those affected Middle East countries, and they are calling their people and so on. So all those little events also add to the results propaganda bring about, and it will continue. The Israeli propaganda machine is there, the ITF and so on, the Iranian state TV, every one of them, including the ones who are on the sidelines, because there are countries who are on the sidelines who are watching so as to know where to come in.
Okay.
So propaganda will play a very important role in this.
Lastly, before we go, and I'm going to put two questions together all in one. What do you say about some Nigerians who are protesting in favor of Iran? And, you know, this is not the first time, actually. There was a time that Russian flags were being carried, especially in some places in the north. And just when the attack on Iran began, we saw some Nigerians reported to be protesting in favor of Iran against the United States and Israel. That is one. Two, what should world leaders be looking at this time? What should they prioritize? Is it deterrence, is it diplomacy, or economic stabilization?
Now, for the protests, it's a very interesting thing that we will leave our own issues and we'll carry others on our heads. I'm speaking literally. I'm speaking Yoruba English so that we can understand ourselves better. You know, we'll leave our own existing conflicts, we'll leave our existing troubles and carry the trouble of other people in the head. I remember when the vice president went to address the UN General Assembly, and the thrust of his address was Gaza, Palestine. The thrust was not what we are going to do to end insecurity in the country. So I felt, no, this is less than expected. For me, as an individual, I felt this is not good enough. You know, we have that mentality. I've seen a lot of people write about Iran being on its own jeje and the US and Israel attacking, that the Zionist regime, as they call it, is doing this and that and so on. I'm like, what is your problem? If it is your own protest that will impact those countries, then perhaps they will listen to you. What have anybody said about what happened in Venezuela? Nicolas Maduro is in detention today.
US custody.
In the US. Why hasn't there been a protest in the north? Or in the south, or in the east, or in the south, north central, as the case may be?
So it can basically be linked to religion.
So to a large extent, it's pointing towards religion. And this is not helping us. It's not helping us in any way, because we are just losing. We lose individuals, we lose economically, and even lose respect in all of this. So I don't think it is something leaders should encourage in any way. Sheikh Gumi, who is a religious leader, said the Ayatollah died at a very auspicious time, because he died a hero and also died during Ramadan or something like that. Yeah, for him, that's what it is. Okay. It's his opinion. I don't understand that. If I don't understand it, then I don't need to carry it on my head as much as he is carrying it. You know. But the ordinary man on the street who would be handed flags and handed plates to go and beg after being handed flags should be made to understand that these things in the end does not amount to anything for them. But unfortunately, these leaders will not do that. They will not educate the people to understand that you have your life to live and you have to create a country that is conducive for you. Because Iran created a country that is conducive for them, or on the other hand, that is why people are revolting, and that is why a conflict has started. So our leaders must find a way to dissuade our people from unnecessary protests. It's so uncalled for and so useless, because I don't see the need and the usefulness of these conflicts, except to assuage the human ego. That is as per the protest. For the world leaders, I think they have to get themselves ready for what is going to come. What is going to come is perhaps increased conflict, which is going to affect them economically one way or the other. And when this happens, it's still going to spiral to the average individual, because I have read some people in the United States complaining that wars do not lead to anything other than increased increased inflation, heightened inflation, which tells on households. And when households are affected, then the people are affected in many ways. So world leaders must find a way to rally around
and look for stabilization this time.
A way to end this conflict as soon as possible, because we cannot be handing Russia, Ukraine, and also be battling the Middle East crisis at the same time, especially escalated Middle East crisis. It will not augur well for the world, and it may lead to some unpleasant consequences.
All right, thank you, Sam Woko, for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful session with you. As we close today's edition of The Big Story, the implication of the U.S.-Israel attack on Iran remains profound and unfolding. From volatile energy markets to heightened diplomatic friction and security concerns that span continents, the world faces one of its most complex geopolitical tests of the decade. With daily developments affecting everything from oil prices and inflation to geopolitical alliances and security strategies, it is a reminder that local decisions in one region can reverberate globally, influencing economies, political alignments, and the daily lives of people everywhere. Thank you to Sam Woko for joining us and sharing his analysis from the newsroom of the Nigerian Tribune. Stay tuned, stay informed, and join us on Trend Watch shortly for another, of course, conversation where we make sense of a world in motion. Samson Balogun is my name.